One of the most important techniques that I teach every single one of my clients is called the Cortices technique. The Cortices technique is a brain balancing technique that's used in the Body Talk system. And it is so helpful that I want each and every person in the world to know how to do this. So I want you to practice this with me so you know how to tap out your cortices, how to balance your brain so everything else can work so much better. So there are 4 things you need to know when tapping out cortices. There are hand positions, there is tapping, breathing, and focus. So we'll start with the hand positions. So we want to cover the entire brain, and we're going to use one hand with fingers nice and flat all together, including the thumb. And we're going to start right where the hairline starts at the back of the head. So I'm going to turn around to show you. It's right here. So if you look over here, it's right where the hair starts. So we're right here. And then since we want to cover the entire brain, we're going to go from here and we're going to jump up 1 and the next one and the next one all the way down to the eyebrows because we want to cover the entire brain. And what we're doing here is we're covering both right and left hemispheres. So I'm going to show it to you from the back. We're starting here. We're going to go up and up and up all the way to the eyebrows. And different people have different sizes of heads, so you may have an extra hand position or one less. It doesn't really matter as long as you cover every single inch of brain. So we've covered this area. Now we want to cover the rest of it on the sides. So we're going to use both hands the same way. We're going to start at the temples and we're going to point backwards. And as you can see, it's above my ear. So we are right here. So this is the last hand position. Okay. Second important thing is tapping. So lots of different modalities use tapping, and it's becoming more and more commonplace to hear about tapping. So I don't feel like I need to explain it to you. But when we do tapping, we initiate a standing wave, and that sends information in the body. So that's how we initiate the healing or initiate the change or bring about balance and all of these great things. So for tapping, you're going to use the other hand, and it's going to be nice and soft, fingers apart, and we're going to do very, very light tapping on the top of the head. And as you can see, I am covering both right and left hemispheres. We're going to tap on the heart center. So this is the sternum, not the heart on the left, but the heart center. And then we're also going to tap on our guts, so right around the belly button. I guess you can't see it right now, but tapping right around the belly button because we have a gut, and just like we refer to our gut feelings and our instinct, it's our gut brain, and we want to incorporate that in our tapping. So we have our first brain, our brain. We have our heart center, which is also called the heart brain. There's lots of activity that's like neurological activity in the heart. So that's why we call it the heart brain and the gut brain. So we've got hand positions, we have tapping. Now we're going to talk about breathing. We want to have nice, deep breaths, and you can exaggerate them. So you want to inhale and exhale. It can all be through your nose is fine. You can inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth, whatever feels good. The rule of thumb in the beginning is to do 2 full breaths at each hand position. And we're going to do this together in a moment. So we've got hand positions, we have got tapping, breathing, and now the last piece is the focus. So when we are balancing our brains, when we're tapping out cortices, our focus is connecting the right and left hemispheres. So we want that communication to go back and forth, and you can visualize that in whatever way makes sense to you. Some people like to think about lights going back and forth. Some people imagine trains going back and forth, whatever makes sense to you. And then we also want to acknowledge that there could be some cold spots. And many people have heard of cold spots, which are simply areas of lowered activity in the brain. So let's say I have a cold spot somewhere, you don't need to figure out where is the cold spot or what do I do with it. All you have to do is hold the focus of warming up the cold spots. I like to think about it as temperature regulation in the brain. So if that makes sense to you, you use that. If warming up cold spots makes sense to you, you use that. The important thing is to keep that focus of communication between right and left and calming down the brain, regulating temperature. That's all you need to know. Okay, we'll move on to put it all together. And this is the fun part, because at first it might take you a couple of minutes to figure out how it's going to go, what you need to do, but then you can do this so quickly. Okay, let's start together. We're starting at the first hand position, right at the back of the head. It's the occiput, if you're familiar with brain areas. So you want to make sure that you're covering both right and left hemispheres under your hand. So we have the hand position. We're going to initiate the breathing now. So we're going to inhale. I'm going to remember that I need to hold on to a focus here. And my focus is the communication between right and left hemispheres and temperature regulation to calm down the brain and regulate activity, balance the brain, all these good terms. So I'm going to hold on to that focus. Take another breath. And I'm going to start tapping. So I'm going to start tapping at the top of the head, covering both right and left hemispheres. And I'm going to tap on my heart, the heart center on my sternum. And then the gut, the belly, right around the belly button. And if I didn't complete 2 breaths yet, I'm going to continue and do this again until I have done 2 full breaths at this hand position. Once I'm done with that, I'm going to move on to the next hand position. So I'm jumping up to the next hand position, making sure I cover all the areas of the brain. And again, take a deep breath. Remember your focus here of communication between right and left and warming up the cold spots. And then you start tapping. Tap on your head, heart center, and the gut. Your breath does not have to coordinate with the tapping, but if it helps you, that's great. We want to do at least 2 full breaths at each hand position. Then we move on to the next one. Take a breath. We focus on the communication. We focus on the cold spots, warming up the cold spots. Deep breathing. And tapping. If you're done with 2 breaths, you move on to the next hand position. When you're here, you're at the top of the head. So you're covering this area. So you could either tap on top of your own hand, or you tap in front or behind. It doesn't matter as long as you tap on both right and left hemispheres. So you take a deep breath and you remember your focus and you tap on the head, the heart, and the gut. And then we're moving on to the hand position that covers the prefrontal cortex, one of the most important areas in the brain. Not that any area is not important, but the prefrontal cortex has a lot of activity that really stresses us out. So we want to make sure we cover this area all the way down to the eyebrows. Take a deep breath, remember our focus, and tap. Now we've done all these hand positions and we're down to the last one. So we use both hands above the ears, temples and pointing backwards. And here what I love to do is just close my eyes, take a breath, give myself, 30 seconds, a minute, because this is where I can feel the energy between my hands and how it's balancing my brain. So you take a moment here. When you're ready, you take one hand off and you tap on the head, on the heart, and on the gut. What I like to do, and you don't have to, I like to bring my hand back, take another breath, and do another set of tapping with my other hand, but it's not a requirement. And I like to finish with both hands on my head. And that's it. This is how you balance your brain. The last point I want to make is how to tap on somebody else. So let's say I'm going to use my little doll here, or little moose. I call him Moose. And let's say we're going to use this as if this is the brain. This is somebody's head. So if they're sitting in front of me facing that way, I can start by holding the back of their occiput with one hand. And I'm just going to do this. Just imagine I'm holding the back just like I was doing for myself right here. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm just going to grab this so he doesn't fall. And then with my other hand, I'm going to ask them to breathe deeply. I'm going to focus on the communication between the right and left hemispheres on their heads, in their brains, and that temperature regulation. And then I'm going to do the tapping on the top of their head, on their heart center. Imagine they're here. And on their bellies. And then I'm going to move up another hand position and do the same thing. Focus on that communication and the temperature regulation. Ask them to breathe deeply and tap. And again here, same thing. And all the way down to the eyebrows, the same thing. And then when it's time to tap the sides of their heads, if they're sitting like this, I'm going to use both my hands. So one hand on this side, I'm going to grab his tail, excuse me. And I like to use my hand this way because it's just more comfortable. But you can turn so you're behind them and use both hands this way. You can turn so you're in front of them and use both hands this way. It doesn't matter which way your hands are as long as it's both of your hands. You don't ask them to hold one side and you hold one side. It has to be both of your hands. And I'll explain why. So if you take your hands together, just a little bit apart, you can feel that there's energy going back and forth. You feel the energy between both of your hands. If you use somebody else's hand here, it's not the same. So we want to utilize this energy field to calm down the brain. So we're going to use it either this way, from the back, or from the side. And you hold it for a second. You ask them to breathe. And then you can take one hand off and do the tapping just like you would for yourself. And that's it. It's super simple. Now for the recommendations, tap out your cortices at least once a day. I like to do it before I go to bed, and I like to do it when I wake up in the morning. It really helps transition into sleep, and it helps get your morning started. If you're about to work on a project, or if you're losing your concentration, you can tap out your cortices. You can tap out your cortices all day long. You cannot get a brain that's way too balanced. And the effects of balancing your cortices, of tapping out your cortices, is not something that will last for a long, long time. That's why we have to do it again and again, depending on the situation. If you're tapping this on your child, I highly recommend tapping out their cortices before bed and before going to school. And again, you can do it any time of day, as many times as you would like. If you would like personal recommendations or other information about this, please reach out. That's what I'm here for. And I look forward to talking to you and working with you and hopefully seeing you sometime soon.